Before you hear this, I want to set the stage for what you're about to hear. Now, this isn't about the night Arthur Smith disappeared, and it's not about the arrest. This is about what happened next inside the courtroom, because that's where everything was decided. In this interview, George Skates talks about the trial, the witnesses, the people involved, and what he says was happening behind the scenes. He describes the pressure, the decisions being made, and the environment he believes surrounded that case. Now, this is his perspective. It's not filtered, it's his account in his own words. So take a moment and really listen to how he describes this part of the story. Here's George.
Stitchy Rogers and I were indicted for all these crimes and everything, And March 14th of 1983, he went to the prosecutor's office, pounded out a deal for himself, and punched state's evidence on me. So, long story short, when we started trial, first, Lou Williams done a hell of a job. I mean, he made that prosecutor tuck his tail and run. And I told him, I said, if I ever had any doubts about you, I said, I don't have no doubts now. I said, you've done a hell of a job. And he says, well, okay, give me $5,000 more. I said, yeah, okay, right,
Yeah.
So, no shit. So anyway, we started off, and then after that, Lou Williams was laid down. He didn't do nothing. And he didn't do absolutely nothing. I mean, it went through. It's just a bullshit trial. It's a kangaroo court. And Snitchy Rogers and his wife are there. The only two people, well, Jerry Whitaker, he testified, said I'd done this one-armed robbery, but there's proof that I didn't, But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It don't mean nothing. But going through the trial, they sit there. This is a hell of a psychological move that the prosecutor put down. Well, first off, to start out, whenever I was on the run, he put my beautiful picture on the front page of the paper, and Art Smith on one side, and Mr. Smith was on the other side. Talk about, this guy's got connections all over, and he's a dangerous man. He said, never be taken alive. I never talked to nobody.
Wow.
They put all that shit out there. They wanted to kill me. But anyway, when we're going through the trial like that and everything, Stitchy, whenever he ruled, they separated. Of course, they separated us, our trials and everything. And I went to trial. Finally, that bottom line, I went to trial April 1st, I think it was. And he come in and testified on me, and he's telling these damn lies. He's sitting there lying. I mean, getting caught in lies and everything else. And nobody does anything about it. You just sit there okay, for example, he said that Volkswagen had a 4-speed Volkswagen with a clutch in it. Well, I never seen an automatic Volkswagen, but that Volkswagen was an automatic.
Yes,
Never had a clutch.
Yeah, I heard that, and I have pictures. And
Bruce Lyle tracked that Volkswagen down for 3 years of ownership and bought it and took pictures of it. Stewards had pictures of, the no clutch and all that. And it still didn't mean nothing. Then this one guy, Snitchy said, I robbed this guy over in Kenton, Ohio, some supermarket over there or something. Said that I approached him at his home in his garage and put him in his trunk and took his money and all that bullshit. And Lou Williams asked him to describe the guy. Well, the guy was about 5'6" to 5'7", about his height. I said, oh man, this son of a bitch. So Lou Williams stood the victim and I up in that courtroom back to back. And Lou Williams pointed out to the jury, this man is not 5'6" to 5'7". How about 6'3"?
Yeah.
So that didn't mean nothing. It was just a bunch of bullshit kangaroo. They caught Tom Martin and an investigator caught him in lies in there, and the judge just turned his head and accepted it. No big deal. It was just strictly a kangaroo court. And anybody will tell you that, first off, in order for a person to be indicted, there has to be some kind of a probable cause. In this case, there was no probable cause. You can't take hearsay evidence into a grand jury and convict somebody or indict somebody on hearsay evidence. Then, when the trial was said and done, like, the judge should have granted a direct verdict of acquittal, Rules 1 and 9. He turned that down, because you never see that happen anyway. You never see anybody get a direct verdict. Very seldom. But anyway, there was no evidence there. Absolutely no evidence to convict. And Lou Williams verbally requested for the Rule 29 a direct verdict of acquittal. The judge denied it right there on the spot. Basically, that's it. You know, I mean, that's just a bunch of bullshit.
I read that.
And Diane Rogers.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just going to say, I read that the jury was only out for like 5 hours.
Something like that, yeah. And that's picking a foreman and having the lunch and everything.
What was you going to say about Diane?
Diane Rogers was coming in and testified back at Jimmy and Snitchy up. And they said there the stories were twisted, they were inconsistent. The whole 9 yards. That is bullshit. I mean, nobody could believe I got convicted on that.
Yeah.
Because it was the prosecutor over there is supposed to be somebody dead now. But anyway, he was supposed to be some big time gangster, big old dope dealer and all that kind of stuff. And he had them girls, he'd get girls out of Marysville and take them out to the Holiday Inn that was running a prostitution ring. Everybody knows all this stuff. And everybody was scared of this guy. I thought he was real intimidating. I thought he was a bitch. That's what I thought, you know. I let him know that, too. For sure. It was just, I don't know. Oh, and another thing, like, they found out that a witness spotted a big car out there where Mr. Smith was found, the field out there. And his wife, Marianne, she had a big car. And the guys that were going to Rockwell, they walked in Rockwell, they were traveling that road, and they seen that big car out there, and they made a sheriff's report on it. By the time that we got the sheriff's report, it was all doctored up, and the color of the car was changed, and everything else. And Lou filed a motion on that. And it was, to the best of my knowledge, it was never heard in that court. You know, just completely throw it away, you know. And
so
that was something that...
Let me ask you, George.
Go ahead.
We know that Jimmy and Diane and Jack and Becky Boop, we know that they all got deals. They all got, benefits. They all got something out of this. What was the reason? What do you think the reason for the prosecutor being so dirty and the people being, the officials being so dirty? Do you think they just won a conviction and didn't care who it was, and you were just the person, and that's how it was?
That's a yes on that for one thing, and also for years and years, I've been a hot number. They wanted to burn my ass. And I had a parole officer one time in 1970. He told me, boy, if you got any sense at all, you'll get out of Marion. Because there's some big wheels up here that want to burn your ass. Want to see you do big time.
Why? What? Why would they want to do that? I mean, would you...
Well, first off, it started with Diane. Like, they arrested... Well, I was in the Delaware County jailhouse, and Diane was working, and she and I were living in common law, and she was signing my checks. She had my permission. She's done it forever,
Mm-hmm.
no big deal. And while I was in the jailhouse, like, she was working and she was doing some, with the little grocery store person or whoever. She always tell them, like, don't cash this check till Friday, go out and get put money in the bank.
Yeah.
And hold it for her and everything is copacetic.
Yeah.
Anyway, like, they cracked her for 9 counts of forgery. And I don't know, nerve to call me in the grand jury when they indicted her. I said, you gotta be out of your fucking mind, man. I said, stop my probation to do them checks. And when I got out of jail, I paid restitution on every last one of them checks. I sold my car and paid restitution. And they come to her, and I know this for a fact, and I can prove this. They come to her and told her, if you hand up the door state, you can walk out of here right now today. She looked at me and says, fuck you, I ain't telling you nothing. Next week she was in Marysville.
Wow.
Girl didn't even commit a crime. And you believe me when I tell you this now. That tore me up. I went berserko. I was out there on the street. I only lasted about 6 months, maybe something like that. But I done a lot of crazy shit.
Yeah.
And that started the ball rolling.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. I was wondering why they were after you so hard.
Well, now here's another thing I got to throw in there. I got out of Lucasville. Well, in '72, I went on the run. And granted, I'm not going to tell you no different. The time that I was on the run, I committed all kinds of crimes, except for rape and murder. It's 2 things I've never done in my life.
Okay.
But checks and all that kind of stuff, I've done the whole state of Ohio. Like there's about 12 different counties that wanted to get a piece of my ass. And long story short, I wound up and I beat all those cases. And I wound up and I done 2 years on that. And when I got out, they were blown away. Like them cops out wrecked cars were going down. The detectives looking at me and going down the street like, damn, that wrecked the car. And I said, oh, what the hell? So now you listen to this stuff. I stayed out. I pulled out of Lucasville in November 1975. I stayed out for 7 years. And the only trouble that I got into was domestic violence or whatever you want to call it. That dude that Diane married, I called up to him over lunch for a while, and I told him, I said, I got 1 month to go on parole. I'm going to whoop your ass now. He wouldn't let my boy come down there to sue me. And he went and filed charges on me. He said I threatened to blow the trailer up, and I didn't do that. I told him I was going to whoop him. But other than that, anyway, they tried their best to send me back to Lucasville on that shit. And the people in the bar, there was like 300 people. 300 people made a petition and sent it to the parole board. And when I got my time up and everything like that, Harry Wolf was the sheriff over there in Union County. He cut me loose. He just get out of here. He said, he called City CW. He said, I'll call CW and tell her to come and get you. You get out of here, And it was just bullshit. But they tried to send me back to Lucasville. And the district man come over here, the district parole officer dude, he come over here and I had to go out to the sheriff's department there to see him. And the my parole officer got the lying about me. I started to go over the table on the dude. I was whooping his ass. I used to have a real bad temper. Very hard to get along with. I started that district man said, see, he said, you don't belong out here in society. You belong in Lucasville. You're not fit to be out here. Fuck you. And they wasn't able to send me back. But then I completed my parole and got off. I stayed out for 7 years, and that's the only trouble I got into was that domestic violence. Now, if I'm out there robbing people and doing this and doing that and killing people for a hobby, how the hell do I do that and get away with it?
Now, that was George, in his own words, his truth on the trial and the people involved. And what he says was happening behind the scenes. And whether you believe him or not, that was the moment that changed everything. Because from that point on, George wasn't just a man accused, he was a man convicted. And the next chapter of this story doesn't happen in a courtroom, it happens behind bars. Because prison isn't just a sentence, it's a world of its own, with its own rules, its own alliances, and its own dangers. And for George, that's where the story takes another turn. So in our next interview, we're going inside the prison system, and into what George says he faced once he got there.